Good morning, friends and fellow traders. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the morning market prep video for March 28th, 2023. Well, my goodness, as we wind down this month, we certainly have had an awful lot of volatility in the market. In the last couple of days of trading, we've had a pretty good rally back to test resistance levels. But as I had suggested in yesterday's morning prep, we needed to be carefully watching these upside resistance levels for that possibility of entrenched bears. And although those bears didn't really show up yesterday, they certainly were strong enough to prevent us from breaking through those price levels. So what does it mean for today? Well, how about we settle in? Let's buckle up. Let's get ready for the Tuesday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thanks so much for being here. I do truly appreciate it. Let's take a look at these charts and see if we can gain some information about how we may want to approach the market for today. Well, one of the first things that is really obvious is the QQQ is the strongest of the indexes, and suddenly yesterday the QQQ kind of ran into some profit taking. And that being said, that brought in just a little bit of uncertainty as we approached resistance levels in the chart. And as you can see, the last couple of days we popped up into here, pushing into that resistance level. And yesterday I suggested there may be that possibility that we could be setting up more of a trading range here. And there's evidence. I mean, we've certainly done this before. If you guys remember, as we were heading into earnings last time, we had set up this trading range in here. And although we popped out of it a little bit right there, we ended up spending about 3 weeks kind of going nowhere in a wide, choppy trading range. And I'm beginning to wonder if we might not slip into another one of those trading ranges, because as we wind up the end of this month, there is that possibility we could get some end of quarter manipulation in there, where we call it window dressing, but that window dressing that can go on right at the end of quarter. But there's also that really big worry and concern about what this next round of earnings is going to look like, how that's going to be. And remember, we always start off the earnings season with the big banks. And obviously there is a concern out there in that banking sector, despite all of the money that the Fed and the Treasury are pouring into this to try and stop this problem. Well, it doesn't, at least at this point, seem to be making that big a difference. So we'll want to watch this pretty darn closely in here. So kind of keeping that in mind, with that possibility that we could just end up in more of a choppy range as we wait till those earnings come into play, let's remember here that resistance is important. And that resistance is something that we have to respect. We have to see it in a chart. And that's one of the things that I think has probably helped me be successful in trading more than anything else. And that is a willingness to look at a chart for what it is, not for what I want it to be. And looking at this chart, we have to respect this idea that there is a fairly significant price level here in this chart and downtrend, all coming together to put a little pressure on that Dow chart. So let's keep an eye on the diamonds in that resistance level in the chart. So if those bulls are inspired and they can punch through that area, well, where are they going to go after that? Well, if they can punch through that area, I think there is another little resistance area right in here. If you look right across, we've got this area right in here. So we've got these resistance areas in the chart that could be the next level to the upside if we can maybe punch through these current price action levels. And if we can, remember, it'll be that push through that downtrend and the hold of the higher low that will really be bullish for the market. So we'll want to watch carefully if that does break. Now, keeping that in mind, if we push on lower here, if the bears find inspiration, I'm going to suggest a retest down in here might be the possible place, and if that were to break, then we come on down here. But let's look for this level right in here as the test for that low if those bears find inspiration today. If we look at our SPY here, before we do that really quickly, let's take a quick look at the moving averages, keeping in mind that we're kind of resting in here right around that 200-day moving average. And one of the unfortunate things we've seen is that our short-term moving averages, let me clear all of this off of that chart, all those drawings. As you can see, we've got our 34 EMA and our 20 EMA down here. Our 8 exponential moving average is still way down here. Prices come back above it from that short-term oversold condition, but just keep in mind our 50-day moving average is still over the top here in that chart. So we've got a little bit of technical resistance here in that chart as well, and even if we can get rallying strongly, we're going to have to deal with that 50-day moving average again before we start getting real comfortable with the upside move here in the diamonds. If we jump back over here to our SPY, SPY, certainly suffering from some of those similar problems here, as you can see. Downtrend in play, resistance in play. We rallied up there. We tried to pop through. The QQQ selling yesterday also softened up things here in the SPY. And you can see we're trying this morning to lift back up here just a little bit. But we've got a little bit of uncertainty. I think maybe the economic data coming our way. And of course, that banking contagion continuing to raise concerns on investors. So watch that carefully in this downtrend here, those resistance levels above. And if those bulls find that inspiration, again, a retest of this level up here seems likely. If the bears find inspiration, I would suggest maybe some support right down in this area would be the place that we would go. And technically here on the chart, you can see the challenge that we've got. As we rally up here to test these levels, we're going to be running right into that 50-day moving average. Now the 50 is above the 200. We've got a much better technical pattern here, but you can see our shorter term averages have closed down here, and we might be just building that trading range in here that I suggested as we wait for earnings. We could really see this market chop around. If we take a look at our QQQ rallied nicely yesterday initially and then popped its head right into that resistance. And I suggested yesterday that possibility that maybe we just pull back here a little bit, or we kind of chop sideways out here to consolidate that move out toward that trend. And we did find that resistance, a little bit of pullback, and you can see tiny little bit of pullback trying to happen here in the pre-market as we wait for some of these economic reports. So keep an eye on that here this morning. Just a little bit of resistance. I'm going to give this one to the bulls, though. This is certainly the most bullish chart in the market right now. An awful lot of confidence being poured into, in particular, the big techs. The very big techs are the ones that have gained all of this energy, and they are the ones holding this index up. We'll see if that kind of confidence in those big techs can continue. I would suggest that earnings might be a little bit challenging for some of these techs as they continue to lay off folks to reduce costs in their business. So that would suggest that their businesses aren't all that stellar, and there may be a little bit of challenge here on these next round of earnings in big tech. So watch that closely. And as you can see here in our moving averages, certainly very, very strong here, but maybe a little bit overbought. Notice how we're kind of stretched away from that 50-day moving average. So I suggested yesterday that possibility, maybe that resting pullback comes back into here to test that 50-day, and that would be bullish if we hold in that area. So watch for that potential. If we take a look at our IWM, now IWM, just not very bullish here overall. As you can see, we're certainly oversold in the short term here. Really strong move to the downside. And we're running into some price resistance here in the chart, as you can see. Not only that, but this downtrend break, we're running into that level. So we pushed up there yesterday, saw a little bit of selling, came back down just a little bit, and you can see we got a little tiny bit of bearishness coming in here this morning. So if the bulls find inspiration in this today, I'm going to again suggest that we pop up here and see if we can test these upper levels. And I will say that it's probably a wide area, somewhere between here and maybe up to here, I think is a possibility if those bulls can really get going to the upside. If they're unable to get that going and the bears find inspiration today, then I would suggest somewhere between here, good support level in there, and if that breaks, then we start looking back down here for these lows of last week. So watch that close. Technically in this chart, you can see pretty bearish situation here. Certainly an oversold condition. We're even stretched away from the 200-day moving average, but we dropped right back through our 50, dropped through our 200, and as you can see, our short-term moving averages crossing back down. We're creating a fairly substantial technical resistance zone in that chart right in here, along with that price action resistance. Let's take a look at our VIX. Interestingly enough, yesterday, as the market pulled back, the VIX had no response at all. As a matter of fact, the VIX is showing that fear dropped yesterday, which is kind of odd to me. We pressed up, and then we really weren't able to hold all that well into the close. We saw those sellers coming in. So watch that carefully here today. Kind of an interesting thing that we're seeing in the VIX. And I gotta believe this really has something to do with kind of the wild speculation that has been going on in the market here recently, the 0-day to expiration options, things like that, dominating volume, honestly, and creating some really funky price action moves here in the VIX. We're not seeing what you would normally see in a market when we find a little bit of selling coming in. There's just no fear here. So watch that closely. Like I said yesterday, any rally back into here that fails would be a good news item for the bulls. Any pop back above that resistance and hold a support would be a very good sign for those bears. So watch those areas closely. If we take a look at our T2122, well, T2122 was kind of interesting. Whoops. Yesterday, there we go, if I can type the right symbol. T2122 was interesting yesterday. At the high point of the day, our T2122 is all the way up here, which may be a little bit on the surprising side for everyone that we could stretch that far that quickly in an upside move in these last 2 days of trading. Really stretch this to the top side. So if those bulls find inspiration in the data today, we may have that upside opportunity in here that we can stretch up into here. So we do still have upside opportunity, but it's amazing how quickly we're running out of that space here on T2122. And if those bears find inspiration, well, we have certainly opened a pretty big opportunity for that push back down if we happen to find those bears. And remember, T2122 does not tell us anything about which way the market is going to go. It just tells us where those pressure points are. So here we are kind of in the middle of the range, a little bit stretched to the upside maybe, but we have to look for both possibilities to exist in that chart. It's when we're down here, it's when we're up here, we look for those better clues on direction in T2122. If we look at our T2108, well, T2108 finally rallied at the end of the day. But with the strength that we saw in that move early on in the day, you'd have thought we'd have seen a little bit more price action improvement here in T2108. 22% of the stocks holding above their 40-day moving average. You'll notice in here that what we ended up doing is rallying right back here into that price resistance. We didn't break through anything. So really not much changed here in T2108 yesterday. We'll want to watch this area up here. If we can't start breaking through some of this area, let's watch for maybe those bears to gain a little bit of confidence to keep pushing. If we take a look at our T2107, going to say kind of the same thing. 38% of the stocks holding above their 200-day moving average. But notice we really didn't do anything confident yesterday. With all that pushing to the upside, all we did was push back up here to test resistance in the chart. And we didn't get anything else done there on the day. We still have this downtrend in here to be contending with T2107. So an improvement, but I don't think it resolved anything or made us feel all that extra comfortable. And our T2101 is just very confused. I think kind of like everyone in the market right now with these big whipsawing price action moves. T2101 is not giving us much confidence here at all on momentum of direction. So shouldn't be a big surprise there, but something to be paying attention to. Let's take a look at our economic calendar here for today. Now our economic calendar has a couple of things on the day that we'll want to be paying attention to. First off, we're going to have international trading goods. Right now, they are expecting in the consensus that that improves just ever so slightly with that trade deficit. So watch that closely. We're going to have these inventory numbers here this morning. Whoops. Right there, retail and wholesale inventory numbers this morning. That might be interesting to see if we start to see inventories grow, and the consensus here on the wholesale is that they may grow just a little bit. So watch that closely. And then we've got Case-Shiller numbers. We're going to have consumer confidence here. We're going to have a Fed release on what they're doing with the SVB bank, so that could certainly create some volatility here on the day because, well, what we know is they're pouring lots of cash into the system to try and stop the bleeding here on the regional banking system. So watch that closely. And then we've got a 5-year note auction here this afternoon to be paying attention to. As you look forward to tomorrow, keep in mind we've got some Fed speak out there. We're going to have pending home sales, and we're going to have that petroleum status tomorrow. So watch that closely. And as we move toward the end of the month here, just kind of keep in mind we've got 3 more trading days to the end of this month. We certainly could see that opportunity of a little bit of a short squeeze that could trigger if the institutions really work that window dressing here at the end of the quarter. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. On the earnings calendar today, by the way, guys, I'm not doing a blog again today. Call it lazy after coming back from vacation maybe. But I'm not doing a blog today, so I'm going to run through the earnings calendar, notable reports here this morning really quickly. Later on this afternoon, we're going to hear from Micron. Now, Micron will be really interesting because Micron was one of the first, if you remember, before we started this whole downside move in the market. Micron was one of the first to come out and warn that there was a problem here in the market. So it'll be interesting to see how they are feeling right now as they report this afternoon. So keep an eye on Micron. We're going to hear from WBA here today. WBA will be reporting. Looks like maybe a little bit of pop in the initial reaction on those earnings reports, and now dropping just a little bit. Still challenged by those downtrend and price resistance levels in the chart. So keep an eye on that. We've got Cal Marine Foods that will be reporting today. We've been seeing, interestingly enough, some defensive sector stocks doing better in the market. We'll talk about that in just a second. But Cal Marine is not one of those, so watch that one close. We're going to get some Dave & Buster's in here today. Dave & Buster's will be reporting, again, pushing in this downtrend here in the chart. There's some price resistance above that Dave & Buster's has to work on, so that'll be an interesting one to pay attention to. We're going to hear from Jefferies here today. Jefferies will be interesting just because we're in the financial sector here. Could be very interesting how the market reacts on that report on Jefferies. We're going to have Lovesac in here reporting, pushing up towards some resistance levels in the chart. Had a pretty ugly bearish engulfing, not bearish engulfing, a dark cloud cover candle here yesterday, heading into those earnings reports. So watch that one today. We're going to get report from Lululemon. Lulu has been rallying toward its earnings report, running right into some resistance in Lulu. So we'll want to keep an eye on Lulu today as they report. Could be quite interesting to see how they move through that resistance to the upside, considering the weakness of the consumer out there. We've got a defensive sector stock also on the list today. That's McCormick, moving up here, and looks like we're powering up here after that earnings report this morning, trying to move through some resistance in that chart. And like I said, I've been seeing some defensive sector stocks really starting to pick up some steam. And last but not least on the list, PRGS will be reporting today. This one has been incredibly bullish, pushing some resistance levels for all-time highs here in the chart. Keep an eye on PRGS as it reports today. So with that, let's take a look at some stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, guys, if you can do me that quick favor, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, if you could please click that subscribe button on YouTube, and also click that bell icon when it pops up so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if you find these videos to be useful or helpful, if you could please continue to do me that favor and leave those comments, click those thumbs up buttons. I apologize, yesterday was just one of those days getting back into the saddle here. I didn't get onto answering those questions yesterday, but I will be doing that today, or answering those comments on the videos today. Let's take a look at some of these stocks that could be setting up. And remember, guys, these are not recommendations to buy or sell any security. As a matter of fact, you're going to have to do your own due diligence and be very, very careful in this market, because the potential of big point moves and whipsaws are, I think, pretty high. So watch that carefully. Let's first off take a look at Spotify. Spotify has been holding up here in this nice consolidating move up here. Spotify has been very, very strong in this upside move, and you can see trying to push through these resistance levels and hold them. And if we can hold in here and continue to move on up, and yesterday we had that little bit of bullishness coming in there, trying to push this on up, and then that selling came in later on in the day and pushed us back down just a little bit, but we're holding this little trend. I'd keep a close eye on Spotify. I think it might also be a pretty good idea to keep an eye on this CRWD. Now, I know CRWD pulling back and resting, but I got to tell you, this has been a really productive, albeit a very slow, upside move here in CRWD. But if we can hold this support area and hold trend in here, I'd look for that next upside opportunity in CRWD. As I mentioned yesterday in the morning prep, some of these defensive sector stocks, wow, really nice move here. Hershey, take a look at Hershey, all-time highs here in Hershey, and really nice little pop out of the box pattern. And by the way, that's what I call this area right here, where we've set this little box around this pattern. There's videos on the YouTube channel about this, but we broke through that resistance, we held it as support, and then pop. It followed through nicely yesterday. Probably needs a little rest or consolidation now in that chart. If you'll draw a line up through here, you'll notice we're holding a trend. So if we were to rest or consolidate back, hold into that support area, I would look for Hershey to move on higher. You could take a look at stocks like KHC. KHC had a pretty good move off the bottom here the last couple of days. Still trying to push up. I don't think this is quite ready for prime time yet. Breaking through that downtrend is one thing. Now proving that we can hold it as support is another. And that's what I'd be looking for, is a little bit of hold of support in there on KHC. But CPB has already made that move, held that price support in here. Nice pop yesterday on CPB, pushing to the upside. You can see pushed on through. That was Friday. Pushed on through yesterday, breaking through that area of resistance. Had a little bit of selling at the end of the day, but I'd keep an eye on CPB to see if that can continue that move on higher. Now, why is this occurring? Why are we seeing some of these defensive sector stocks moving up? And I will say, I think it just has to do with the fact that they're dividend payers. They're those good, easy, stable companies. We're getting ready to head into earnings and that uncertainty on those earnings. And I think there may be a little bit of institutional seek of safety going on here in some of these defensive sector stocks. You can even, see those moves in places like Kroger. Kroger's been really strong into that grocery sector. Walmart in the last couple of days, really nice move to the upside. Again, I don't think this is quite ready for just jumping right into, but something to pay attention to. AMD is one of those tech stocks that's holding into a really good pattern. And if you take a look at AMD, we shot up a little bit strongly here. Needs a little rest or consolidation. We are pulling back and resting into that chart. Now, remember, MU could have an effect on AMD today, so watch that close. But if we can hold in this area of support, I'd look for that next opportunity to the upside, somewhere between where we are in that trend. And it's certainly the way the market has been moving lately, you certainly couldn't rule out the possibility that it goes way ahead of that trend. So keep an eye on AMD. I'm also going to put NVIDIA on that list. It has been very strong here, continues to be phenomenally strong. And as you can see, pushing up here in that chart, this little resting pullback that's coming in here on this support, I'd look for that next opportunity. We're not that far away from this trend. A couple more days and maybe we can move that one on through to the upside. So watch that close. When it comes to precious metals, boy, I think I've got to continue to harp on this possibility here in these precious metals. GLD pulling back here to this support level. Got a little carried away. No doubt about it. If it can hold in here on this area of support in that chart, I would watch for a little bit of rest coming into that trade. And if it can hold in here, then I would look for that next upside move, potentially coming in GLD. As long as this banking contagion remains out there, that could certainly be a possibility. So keep a close eye on that. And like I said, if you're interested in gold, then you may want to take a look at PHYS, a physical gold, or you're not buying paper gold like GLD, but you're buying physical gold. And PHYS, not an expensive stock here to trade. And you can see trying to hold some support in here. So if that holds in this area, you might want to take a look at PHYS. Silver would be also another thing to be paying attention to. Really nice strong move to the upside, catch a little resting pullback. And if you want physical silver, look at PSLV. PSLV, physical silver, that you could pick up in here, testing resistance here in this chart on PSLV, but maybe some opportunities if that holds some of these support levels in here and rests and consolidates for a little while. So with that, guys, I want to wish you all a fantastic day. I want to wish you great results in your trading. Once again, the video is a little bit longer because I didn't do a blog this morning. Hope you don't mind. I want to wish you guys all a fantastic day. I wish you great results in your trading, and we'll see you right back here bright and early Wednesday morning. Wish you all the best.